say, and then we'll introduce our guest for the day.
So I wanted to just take a quick moment to invite all of you online or in person. We're going to have a virtual professional development session next Wednesday, December 8th in the morning from 7:30 till 8:30. I will send out a calendar invite. But it's put on by the by the district equity team, and a couple of your equity team members are going to be presenting and facilitating. It's an action workshop, so it won't just be a come and listen, but actually a come, participate, learn, grow, and kind of start building some of your own personal steps or next steps towards equity work. So again, you're invited to come. We'd love to have you. Myself, Katie Buckley, and Sabrina Summer will all be facilitating this first PD session. We plan to do a few more throughout the spring, using those morning times during the optional PLT session. So I will send out a calendar invitation. You're all invited when you can come.
Thank you, Jill. With that, we have our guest, Erin Jones, that's back with us today to talk a little bit about some strategies for our classroom. We have to continue going through this part of our school year. And one of the things Erin has done today, she got an opportunity to kind of walk in the hallways a little bit to some of our students, and she's able to present to our students here this afternoon as well. I came in toward the end of the students had some really good questions, and we even had a few students that came down and wanted to talk to Erin a little bit about whatever. It seemed like some good conversations, and she was able to go and take some time with those particular students too as well. As I walked in, the students were really engaged in what she had to say. So with that being said, we want to welcome Erin back today, and she's going to present to us again after meeting with some of our students and seeing the culture of our building a little bit, and then also spend some time with us when we start the school year off. And so with that, we had some feedback from our teachers, and that feedback, myself and administrative staff, we gathered together, and we were able to get that information over to Erin. And with that, she's going to present to you the outcome of some of those feedback. So again, welcome to Erin Jones, back to David Hospital.
Thank you. It is good to be here. So I try to always get places early, and this time we got here about an hour and a half early, and I was able to walk the neighborhood. So that's something that's really important to me, to get to see where do your students live. And the other reality is that you had students wandering the neighborhood, which is not surprising to me at all, because it's that way with every building. But it was just interesting. They could tell, I think, that I was connected to you somehow. The red and black may have helped, but it was interesting to watch them watch me walking the neighborhood, and I was able to greet each of them that were out in community. But it just is really important, I think, for me to understand the context. So it was interesting to see the nicer homes, and then the trailer park, and the apartments that are under construction, which I assume probably some of those have been under construction forever. I'm just looking at them and having lived in a community like that. So it was really, I think, important for me to be able to see where are the places that your students are living. I actually went and visited Portland Christian School before this because I had to drop off some books, and we just talked about the homelessness that people are experiencing up and down Stark Street, and anyway. So it was good to be able to see that and to see a bit of what your young people are living in, and I think that matters. I think school happens in context, and what happens in each community is different because of where your students live and then where you all live to come and work in a space like this. So I think it was really good learning. Now, on my phone it said it was not going to rain, so I left my rain jacket in the car, and then of course as my assistant drove away, it started raining, so I got a little soaking wet, but it's the Northwest. So it's just, it dries again, but it was good to be able to walk community, and also to see where are their stores and what kind of stores, right? I didn't see any fresh food. right? And that kind of stuff matters. Is it the corner store where kids are having to buy their food from? So I saw lots of like corner store kinds of things. So I just wanted to share that because I think it's important as somebody who's new to your community that I got a chance to see some of the things that were happening. The number of cars that are in disarray, that are just parked on corner, that says a lot too about folks. So it's just a really interesting walk. And also the assets that are in your community. So one of the things I thought as I walked, there are a number of churches that are in just within a mile of here, Spanish-speaking churches, English-speaking churches, Russian. I saw several. And it made me think too, and I was telling Erica that I wonder if you couldn't partner with some of the community-based organizations, whether a church or other. I saw the dental office and the veterinarian. If there aren't adults in your community that would be willing to take a day and just walk for an hour at lunch and just be in your community. And so as they see students, it's not about, go back to school, child. I see you out here. You should be in school. But I see you, student. I see you. Hey, are you hungry? I happen to have a snack. Who are you? What's your name? I just wonder if there's a way to partner with community-based organizations so that you can have your lunch off, but there are some people in your community that are also caring for your students. This campus, y'all, can I tell you, I travel all over the country. I've never seen a more massive campus. This is like an administrator's nightmare. I'll just say, having been all over the country, there's only one other building in Long Beach, California, that I've ever been on that has as many entrances as this one. So just as I was walking, I was like, oh, I'm glad I'm not an administrator here, because trying to manage, it's like herding cats, I can only imagine. But I think there's a way to partner with your community to get help, because you can't do all the things on your own. So those were just some of my thoughts. Students today, we had such a great time. They had really great questions. We had some really emotional young people at the end who really are, and these are leaders who decided to come, who were really emotional and feeling stretched. How many of you would say you're June tired right now? Yeah, your students are too, right? Like everyone, as I travel the country, every educator I have met with is June tired right now. I got to be with the Teachers of the Year. This is a crazy story that I think Mr. Carity knows because he follows me on Twitter, but I had the craziest experience. So I was doing some work at Gonzaga University the week of October 10th, and our current Teacher of the Year for Washington State is a former student of mine. And super proud of her. I had her 22 years ago, and we've stayed in touch all this time. We've just keep running back into each other over time. She's also biracial. And so there's just a lot that we have in common. And she sends me a text message on October 12th and says, hey, Erin, what are you doing the week of October 16th? I said, well, I'm doing a lot of things. Like, I expected her to say, I need an hour of your time on Zoom. That's what I thought she was going to say. And I was like, well, girl, I'll move stuff for you. She said, well, I'm going to accept my Teacher of the Year award at the White House. Would you be my +1? Yes. I will cancel it all for you. And so I went to DC, and what was really awesome is the Oregon State Teacher of the Year is one of her best friends. And so I got to hang out with the Oregon State Teacher of the Year and just so many teachers, but they are all saying they are June tired, like our best. And so I just show yourself some grace. This year is not like any other year in teaching. My husband is a freshman English teacher and a head football coach. Was a mistake. Don't teach writing and be a head football coach. As he probably knows. Yeah, grading papers and trying to coach a team has been really hard for him, but he said, honey, I've never been this tired in my career. And so I want to invite you all to think about, what are you doing to take care of yourselves? Because I'm seeing a lot of burnout in teachers as I travel the country, and even our Teachers of the Year, I talked to 3 of them who are quitting. These are our best teachers in the country, and they're quitting teaching this year because they're just worn out and being asked to do extra things. And so I want to invite you today. Part of what I've been asked to do is to give you some strategies for students, but I really want to start with, what are you doing for you? Because you actually can't give to your students if you're not sowing into yourself. And so the 4 strategies that I talked about with young people today I actually want to offer them to you first to practice. And I would offer to you that these strategies are things that I am doing every day. They're things that I'm committed to making habit in my own life, but you can also teach them to students. I love that you're a Character Strong school because Houston Kraft, one of the co-founders of Character Strong, we got to be on a stage together last week, and so many of the things that I'm talking about, he's talking about. So many of the things I'm talking about with equity, he's talking about in social emotional learning. And so what you're doing with Character Strong is also, well, I work with Character Strong anyway, but we're aligned in how we're thinking. And so I just want to offer you 4 postures that I am committing to, and that I want to invite you to make habits for you, but then also whatever classrooms you're in, to think about how you can do these things with students. So number 1 is gratitude. And I have talked with you all about this at the beginning of the year, but I want to come back to it and remind us that gratitude is not this mushy, nice thing that we do. And it's not something that some people are just better at. It's something some people are more practiced at. And the science of gratitude is that it will actually change your brain chemistry if you make it a habit. You cannot make a thing a habit by doing it once a week. Just doesn't work that way. As a basketball player, I got good at shooting free throws because I shot 100,000 free throws. I shot so many free throws. If you say free throw, I spin the ball twice, I bounce it twice, snap. I just do that every time. It's so much a habit for me. Gratitude is like that. The more you do it, the more it becomes a habit, and it will change your brain chemistry to allow you to be more positive. And we need some more positive right now. So I'm going to do what I did with the students today, and I want to invite you on the count of 3 to whisper, because we're still in COVID. No spitting on the people in front of you. I want you to just whisper out, what is one thing that you're grateful for? And here's the beauty of gratitude. You actually don't have to be grateful for something big. It could be something really little. And maybe it's Monday after Thanksgiving break. This is one of the hardest days to come back and teach. So today, your little gratitude may be like this. And that's okay. Start there. But on 3, I want you to speak out, whisper though, don't yell. Whisper, what is something that you're grateful for today? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I couldn't hear all of that, but y'all spoke it out, and I want to encourage you to think about in your classrooms tomorrow, how could you make that part of your classroom work tomorrow, that you just take time? And one of the ways that I do this in classrooms is sometimes we'll take 3 minutes and we'll whip around the room and every student will share. Other times I have students just in pairs turn, and you have 30 seconds, share something that you're grateful for. One of my 8th grade students, let's go back to this. How many of you realize that your 9th graders are like 7th graders right now? And your 10th graders are like 8th graders. Yeah, right? They're all 2 years behind right now. So all the stuff that I did with middle school children, I'm doing with high schoolers right now because they've missed that 2 years of social emotional development. So what you're seeing, we are seeing all over the country, that students really, we've got to start as if they've missed a couple years of school, because they did. They've missed that development. And so, but I say this because one of my 8th graders that I was working with online in my virtual classroom every day, she started a gratitude wall, because sometimes your students will struggle with, man, what to be grateful for, and they just will be grateful for the same thing every day. So she started a wall, and she created a list of the kinds of things to be grateful for. You may want to think about that in your classroom. You know your students. And if they struggle with that, like, think about things like family, my pets, my friends, my sports team, whatever. But come up with a list on your wall of the kinds of things that one could be grateful for, and just have students, if they're struggling, look up there, okay, what today? Let's not assume that they can just come up out of the void with something. Because how many of you felt, and I only know this word in French, but vapid, empty. How many of you felt a little empty recently? Like, just things that used to be really clear, like right now are just not clear. Guess what? If you're vapid, your kids are too. Right? And so let's show grace for ourselves, and let's, as often as you can, help students with some hints on the wall. Really help them with some hints on the wall. So gratitude is number 1. Second one, and I think I did this with you before, but I want everybody to put your hands out like this. Cup your hands out in front of you. Cup your hands in front of you. And I want you to picture, what are you good at? What are you really good at? I didn't say you're the best at it. You may not have awards for this thing, but you are really good at this thing and you like this thing. You like doing this particular thing. I want you to picture in your hands something that you are good at, something that you like to do. Picture it physically in your hands. Okay, you can put your hands down. How many of you are good at communicating? You would say you're a good communicator, okay? How many of you are good with technology? Now I see a lot of this. How many of you are good connectors? You're good at connecting people. Okay? How many of you are good with words, like the written words? You're really good with the written word. Okay? Where are my numbers people? Where are the numbers people? You like numbers more than words. Okay. I see you pointing. I saw that. It's like those two right there. Let's see. How many of you like to bake? Where are the bakers at? Okay. Where are the grillers at? Where are my grillers at? Okay. I live with 2 grillers in my house. Okay. How about cooks? You like to cook. Okay. Where are my musicians at? Musicians. Okay. Singers, where are the singers? And I didn't say you were the best. Like, you may not be going out for the voice, but you like to sing. Okay, where are my singers at? Okay. I sing in my car all the time. I'm not trying out for the voice. Let's see, where are artists? Where are my artists at? Any kind of art. Any kind of art, okay? Where are my athletes at? Where are the athletes at, okay? Okay, yeah, it works, okay. Let's see. Who's really good at meeting new people? You're really good at meeting new people. You can walk into okay. Yeah, my kids say all the time that strangers are just potential friends for our mother, and we wish she would just not say hello to that person at Safeway. That's me. Okay, who speaks more than one language? Okay. Where are my introverts at? Yeah. Okay. We often elevate extroverts. I'm a selective extrovert, which always freaks people out because they're like, you are a public speaker for a living. Yes, which is why I need to go walk for 2 hours afterwards. Because I get over-peopled. Can anybody relate to that? I am peopled out. I actually did a really dumb thing, and I facilitated a whole day of youth work at our state school directors conference on a Thursday last week. And then I was the MC for the entire conference on Friday, and then I taught 3 classes on. I texted my mom. I was like, Mom, I am peopled out. I need to not see another person for a while. I want to offer that a lot of those things that you described in your hands are not on a job description, but they are the things that will connect you to each other and to your students. How many of you have a student right now that you don't think they see themselves as having any value? How many of you can think of a student in your class right now who doesn't think they have value? Yeah. One of the things I challenge your student leaders to do is to help the students around them who don't see value right now see their value. I want to invite you to do the same thing. What are the assets people have? Speaking of the equity work, a lot of times when we talk about equity, we talk about what we don't have in our hands and what they don't have, instead of starting with, what do we bring to the table? Every person brings something to the table. Every group brings something to the table. What if we started there instead of with what we don't have? Flip it on its head. What does that community bring to the table? What does that student bring to the table? I want to invite you, both for yourself right now, where you may feel like a crappy teacher. I'll just speak as a teacher's wife right now. My husband feels like a really crappy teacher right now. And he would say that to you. If he were standing in front of you, he would say he feels he's not grading well. Here's what I'll tell you, he's doing really well. His instruction in front of classrooms is really great. He's been coaching kids who went to the playoffs. He's not graded well, and so he's beating himself up every night. Every night he does something, and he's beating himself up. I'm like, honey, you can't do it all well. I'm going to invite you all to show yourself some grace right now. Get it done and show yourself some grace. Because here's the other thing, your students are watching you, and even if they don't hear you say, I suck, they can feel it. So let's be kind to ourselves and to each other. What are the assets? What are the assets that you're bringing into the room? Next thing I ask the students, and I want to invite you to turn and talk to a partner about this. I ask students to think about, what does it mean right now to be brave and courageous? Because I think we are in a moment where we absolutely need adults to be brave and courageous. What would it mean for you to be your best and bravest self right now? As an educator, as a human being, as an educator and a human being, what would being brave and courageous, what does that look like? What does it sound like? How are you showing up as brave and courageous right now in your role? I want you to turn and talk to a partner, maybe at most groups of 3. What does it mean to be brave and courageous right now as an educator? And how are you showing up that way? Or maybe, what do you aspire to be? Maybe you're not showing up as brave and courageous right now, but there's this aspirational thing. Turn and talk. What does it mean to be brave and courageous as an educator right now? Turn and talk for 2 minutes.
Hello, everybody. Mike, brave and go across the bubble.
Okay, wrap it up, 30 seconds. Take 30 seconds to wrap up your conversation. Okay, I would love to hear from 3 or 4 of you. Maybe more, but at least 3 or 4. What does it mean right now to be brave and courageous for you? What does that mean? Your students had some great answers. What do you think as a educator? What does it mean to be brave and courageous right now? Yeah.
To try something new and admit it to your kids that it may not be working.
That's
It's new.
yeah. So good. Be willing to try something new, even if it doesn't work, and being willing to admit, man, I tried that. That sucked. I had this great lesson plan designed, and it did not work, but I tried. Yeah, that's really good. What else? Yeah.
Showing up and being here for our kids.
Showing up and being here. That's so good. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to add to that, and then I'll get to you. I was with our state's superintendent of the year, and we had a number of schools that had to shut down last week on Wednesday, Tuesday. Did you all have that problem too? Okay, well, in our state, we had a number of school districts that so many teachers called out the day before Thanksgiving break that like all of Seattle had to shut down. There were several other districts kind of right outside of it. And she is the superintendent of a district right outside of Seattle. And she explained to her staff in a public message, hey, y'all, we need to show up. I know that y'all want a break. I know you want an extra day. But our families don't have the ability to find childcare with 24 hours notice. And so I need you to show up for your students. And it was so powerful because, there are lots of people saying, let's take care of the teachers. And I would say, yes, and how do we show up for students that really don't have any other place to go, and they don't have a warm house and they don't have food at home. And so here may be the only place where they get that. Yeah. It's hard though, y'all. It's hard. It's really hard. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to it, showing across staff. You just hit on it, but you want to show across staff too.
Yeah.
Some days you don't know what you're going to get, but you got to show up in it.
Yeah, I got to show up for staff. And that's one of the things I've been asking principals and superintendents around the country is how are you showing up for your staff? How are we feeding into the people that are feeding into our children, right? And it's another really important question, yeah. Yes?
I was just going to say, like, owning your mistakes. Saying, hey, your mistake is right up now.
Yeah, so good. Owning your mistakes. I posted something on Instagram about 6 weeks ago. It was a meme, and it was a quote that I really liked, but it was out of context, and I had been traveling like all over. And literally in 6 weeks, I was home 8 days. Travel is overrated, y'all. Planes are overrated. But I was tired, and I liked the idea of the meme, but I did not do the research on who it was attributed to, and I didn't do the research on context. And so I had posted it on Instagram, and my Instagram goes directly to my Facebook, and within minutes I had people on my Facebook, Erin, I don't think you've done your research on who this is attributed to, and this is the context of it, and I realized, oh my gosh, I really messed up. And because I had messed up publicly, on Instagram I posted a public apology, and I said, y'all, I, as a leader, have a responsibility to do better. I did not do my research, and apologizing is really hard. It's really hard, but I think as teachers, it's so important. Our students remember when we apologize. When we say, man, I messed up that lesson. Like, I totally blew it today. Or, man, I did not grade enough papers, and you still don't have your grades. Like, I think they really appreciate it when we are willing to put it out there and say, man, I messed up. So important, yeah. What else can you do to be courageous? What's another way that you're showing up as courageous? Or that you aspire to be courageous? Even if you're not yet there. Okay. One of the things that students said, which are just so wise, one of the students said it's impossible to learn new things if we're not uncomfortable. How brilliant is that for like a 16-year-old to say that? And I think she was absolutely right. I think it's really hard. It's impossible to learn. Muscle is built by breaking down muscle, which doesn't feel good. So I was a runner regularly until the pandemic, and then about 6 months into the pandemic, my 50-year-old body was like, yeah, the concrete, we don't like that every day. Because my body was used to mixing it up. I'd be outside 2 days and then inside on the treadmill 3 days. When the gyms closed, I was on concrete, and my body was like, yeah, no, we don't like that. So I stopped running for a while and just walked, and I've gotten back into running. My body hurts right now. Like, I cannot remember it hurting before. Like, there are places in my body that really hurt. And I know that because it hurts, I've got to get back out and run tomorrow. Because that's how I'm going to get strong. Right, but how easy would it be to just say, I just don't want to hurt anymore, so I'm just going to go walking now and not go back to running. It's that way in teaching, too. Like, we as adults have to be willing to step into that new thing, to step into the discomfort and embrace it. And I thought your student so aptly described, man, being courageous right now is stepping into embracing that discomfort. Okay, any last ideas about how you can press in and be courageous? Any last thoughts? Okay, so gratitude, number 1, assets, what's in your hand, 3, brave. We're going to do a grounding activity, and then I want to get into some strategies for you all as classroom teachers. So I am standing, you're all sitting. If you could sit as straight as you're able to, sit up as straight as you're able to, get your feet as flat on the floor as possible, get them planted in the ground. I love to imagine that we're connected. I know we have some people joining us from their classroom, so I just want to imagine that we're connected through our feet all across this community. If you're able to close your eyes, close your eyes. If not, if that makes you uncomfortable, find a spot on the wall and just focus on the spot on the wall, just to eliminate distractions. We're going to take just 20 seconds to focus on our breathing. I want you to listen to, feel the breath as it goes in and out of your body. And just 20 seconds, I'll cue us in by saying, take a deep breath in, blow it out. I will count to 20 in my head. You just keep breathing deeply in and out. As thoughts come into your head, cast them out. We're just focusing all of our attention on listening to and feeling our breath, and then I'll cue us back in at 20 seconds. Take a deep breath in. Blow it out. Take one last deep breath in. Blow it out. Open your eyes, stretch a little bit. Again, that may seem really mushy, but there's something really powerful about just stopping what we're doing. We tend to run from one thing to the next, and are never fully present where we are. So I just want to invite you. How many of you do and say dumb things when you're tired? Part of the reason we yawn is to get more oxygen to our brain. I want to encourage you. I ask students this, but I know this to be true for teachers too. How many of you have a period of the day that makes you crazy? Yeah. For some reason, for me, it was usually 6th period. Not always, but often 6th period. I think because students were just tired by then. But I want to encourage you, especially as you know that class is coming in, to just ground in. You don't have to tell students as they come in, I'm grounding in now because you're making me crazy. Don't do that. But you can just on your own, just ground in and just pause. And guess what? You could stop class in the middle if they're getting a little bit out of control and just say, you know what, we're going to practice grounding in right now. That grounding in strategy is really powerful for teenage children. And especially right now, your freshmen who are 7th graders. There is something really powerful about teaching them self-regulating strategies, and that is a really easy one. You can Google ground-in strategies. There are lots of different ones, but that one I like because it's simple. You can do it anywhere. It doesn't take a lot of thought. But I want to invite you. Those 4 postures are really great strategies to use with students. 1, gratitude. 2, assets, what's in your hand. 3, being brave and courageous. 4, grounding in. How many of you spent some time today reviewing your expectations for class? How many of you spent time doing that? Okay. I want to invite you to do that tomorrow if you didn't do it today. And it may seem weird, like we were just with them last week. They just had over 100 hours in a different environment. And right now, especially in the context that we're in, they need those reminders. So I want to invite you to take time. And you may say, well, Erin, I've got so much curriculum to get through. Here's what I'm going to invite you to think about. If you can do that work with your students tomorrow, then the next day you'll be able to really hit it hard. If you don't, I think you're going to find yourself frustrated. This is so important. The next couple of weeks before winter break are really important. And guess what? Your students are stressed out. I could see that in them. I could see it in your leaders here. So I can only imagine what your students who are not leaders are feeling like. How many of you are seeing stress in students in ways that you've never seen it in your career? Yeah. We're seeing young people right now. I just spoke at a mental health conference last week, and we're seeing the levels of mental health right now are at the place that in the 70s they were seeing in mental institutions. We're seeing it in young people right now. And so those needs, they're really desperate. And so we can think we got to get through all this curriculum. But if they are not well, and they're not focused, and they're not grounded, all of that curriculum you want to get through, they're not going to get to anyway. So I just want to encourage you, you will be less frustrated with them if you can just stop and remind them, here are my expectations, here are my homework expectations, here are my behavior expectations. Be really clear with students. And I would invite you to have the conversation about what are you going to need to be your best and bravest self in this classroom. I want to invite you tomorrow to have that conversation with your students. Engage them in co-creating what are the expectations going to be for us. And I think you'll be much less frustrated if you can take some time, invest it. It's not a sacrifice, it's an investment. Okay, so that was thing that I was thinking about. Okay, so here's what I would like for you to do. Also in small groups of 2 or 3, I want you to clearly articulate to your colleagues what are 2 or 3 competencies that you would hope to really get grounded in your students in the next, between now and winter break? When are you out for winter? What's the date?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay, so you got it. You're like, we got the 20 days, exactly 20 days. So here's what I want to ask you to think about. What are 2 or 3 competencies, skills that you want to make sure your students have in the next 3 weeks? I want you to clearly articulate that to the people in your group. So make groups of 2 or 3, and I want you to think about in your instructional practice, what are 2 or 3 skills, strategies, competencies that you want to have your students really be able to do, be able to demonstrate in the next 3 weeks. And I know 2 or 3 is not a lot, but if you could make sure that every student in your class was able to do these 2 or 3 things or exhibit these 2 or 3 things, what would those be? Take a minute to think about that, and then I want you to turn and talk to your colleagues in groups of no more than 3. I'll give you about 5 minutes.
Well, we get a bonus.
Take one more minute, one more minute. Thirty more seconds. Wrap up your conversation. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, last 2 strategies that I want to offer. And I've watched this, both strategies we've used in a number of different schools. This next one, it's tough, but I think in a building that's as big as yours with as many students as you have. Again, I told you that as I was walking in your neighborhood, there were about 20 students that I saw just wandering. What was really fascinating too about almost all of them, they almost all had their masks on. That was just fascinating to watch. And some of them had their mask all the way to their eyes and then a hoodie on, like hiding, right? I mean, Y'all are seeing that, right? I see all the nodding heads. But it was interesting even off campus. So here were kids off campus, and I couldn't tell, okay, you're trying to hide so I don't know who you are? Or are you really trying to hide? Like you're trying to hide from the world. But here's why I'm mentioning this right now, because this strategy is something that I've seen some bigger high schools and middle schools use. And I don't know exactly how you would operationalize this, but I know there are schools that do it, and I'm hoping somebody can think about how to do it in this school. If you have class lists, and if you could have all the staff who have students check off who do you know well. Like you know them well enough that you could see them out in community and you feel comfortable like walking up and saying something to that student. Now, just because they're in your class, you may not feel comfortable walking up to random students out in the world, right? But who are the students that you know really well? And could you send around class lists and have teachers mark down, man, this student I know well, this student I know well, man, this doesn't, and who is not being seen? What will happen at the end of that is you will get a chance to see who is not yet seen by someone on your staff. And I want you to start with those students to make a commitment. We're going to make sure that student is seen by somebody on staff. So I want to offer that you start this with your certificated staff. Start it with the classroom teachers, and then pass that on to paraeducators, to your front office staff, because the reality is that your front office and maybe security are going to know students in a way that some of you don't, right, for various reasons. Your coaches are going to know students that some of the teachers don't really have that personal connection with. So who are those other people that are in your building that may have relationship with those students? So make sure it gets around to all the adults that are working with students. But then I want you to create a list of students that don't have anyone who knows them. And I want to invite you to start with these students. Could you send them on winter break, that day of winter break, could you send each one of them home with a handwritten note from somebody? Send them home with a handwritten note. And that may seem like such a silly little thing. Can I tell you, one of my rules for myself when I taught secondary was every quarter, all of my students got a handwritten note from me. Oof, there were days when I first started doing that, my husband is like, honey, you cannot write a whole page for each child, because you were getting no sleep. So I got an index card, and I would make myself, I had to write at least 2 sentences for each student. I knew it was important, but it wasn't until 10 years after I'd left to the classroom as an administrator, I get a call from a student that I had her now 14 years ago. Her name is Tanisha Sharp. Tanisha said, Miss Jones, I'm graduating from my master's program, and I want you to show up at my graduation party. And I show up, and I knew that she cared about me. I knew that we had a connection, but it wasn't until her graduation party where she said, Miss Jones, I need to call you up front. And she pulls out this box, and I had her all 3 years of middle school. And she said, Miss Jones, I have every single letter that you wrote me. So 4 times 3. She had all those letters. And she said, in graduate school, when I wanted to quit, I would pull out your letters to me. And I just had written 2 or 3 sentences on a piece of paper. I'm going to invite you to first figure out who do you see and who do you not see. And I think it's powerful when you see, and it's not about shame, blame, or guilt. When you see that list of however many students don't have an authentic connection, don't be guilty and shame and oh my gosh, we suck. Just take action. And I'm going to invite you that first action to write a handwritten letter to those students. But I want to invite you also to think about who are those students right now that you know need that note. And they may be seen by you. I'll tell you, 3 young women, and you got to see those 3 young women come up to me at the end of the leadership group of 3 young women all came up to me and said a version of this: there's nobody who sees me. And these are leaders in your school. And I don't say this to shame you, because this is happening in every school. 3 young women who probably, you think you see them, they're your best kids, I assume. One of them, that she described what she's doing, and like, how is nobody, she doesn't feel seen somehow. And so I want to invite you to think about who might those students be that you have a relationship with that really could use a handwritten letter. I want to invite you to just pick 5 students that you already know to send home with just an index card, 2 to 3 sentences. That matters right now. And as we all know, this next 3 weeks, and in fact, the week before winter break, I don't know for you, but for me, my entire career was always the worst behavior of students. Is that true here? The week before winter break? Okay. So every building that I've taught in, the week before December break was always the toughest week of the year. And here's why. For a lot of my students, they knew they were going home to homes where there was either abuse happening, they weren't going to get enough food, or there was no heat. And so they would act out because they were really stressed and scared about what was coming. I just want you to think about what could you put in the hands of young people as they think about going into a couple weeks where we get a break, but for them, this is not a break they're actually looking forward to. Winter break and summer break, spring break as well, are really tough for students that don't have secure home lives, who are on the edge of homelessness. I assume you have a number of students that are couch surfing right now. Right? What could you sow into them with real intention over the next 3 weeks? Something really practical, but those handwritten notes, and then maybe a gift card to a restaurant in the area or something that they could actually use. Some gloves, a new coat. Be intentional in thinking about what could each of these students use. But I want to invite you to go through your student lists and think about who are we missing, who are we not seeing right now. And you may be surprised by who is actually known, and you may be surprised who is not actually seen by anyone here. And don't let it be a source of shame. It's an opportunity now to reach out in a different way. So I just want to invite that. I'm going to stop here, and I'd love to just open for questions, thoughts that you have before you all have the last part of your meeting that I will not be here for. I think you have union business or something. I don't know. But I would love to answer some questions. Or just troubleshoot with you, be a thought partner with you as you're thinking about what you're walking through right now. Yeah?
What were some of the things that you talked to students about today?
So I talked with them about being brave and courageous, and they have such great, and it's all recorded, so you may want to go back through and just clip that part. Like, that may be a really good activity for you to do, is just clip that part of it, because they had really great answers, and I made sure I repeated everything they said, so it's all on camera. But we talked a lot about what does it mean to be brave and courageous. We talked about what does it mean to be a leader, which is also great. And what I loved most about this group of students is we had rugby players, we had student council, we had link crew, we had the BSU was here. So you had leaders from different kind of types of groups of kids, and they each had really powerful ways to think about what does it mean to be a leader right now. They talked about things like make sure when you say something you actually do it. They talked about being trustworthy and honest. They talked about being willing to stand up and say something even when maybe your friends don't agree with you. They talked about the importance of, calling out stuff when it's wrong. Even if maybe it's you that has, back to your apologizing, the student said, there are times when we're gonna stand up and say something and then realize that our statement was wrong, and we need to own that. And then we also need to hold people accountable when they say and do things that are hurtful. But I think there were some really good clips from that part of the conversation that I think you as a team should hear, because they had really, really thoughtful responses in every sector. So it wasn't just ASB students who tend to be the ones that are super confident about speaking up. Every different group of students had really thoughtful things to say that I think would benefit you to hear. Yeah. And we practice the 4 postures. So your leaders have heard the 4 things that I talked with you all about. And I think it would be a good idea to start practicing those, because the students are ready to do that too. Yeah. Other thoughts or questions, wonderings, concerns? Yeah. Yeah.
Frustration with just all the things. So I'm curious, in your travels or in your expertise, are there things that we can be doing as a staff, together as a staff, to support each other?
Yes.
That also doesn't feel like one more thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, so one of the things that I'm hearing and seeing in a number of different spaces is people are doing silly things like exercise, like getting to school a little bit early in the morning and doing whether it's yoga or like dance parties. I'm seeing dance parties in a lot of places where they'll play 80s music or even hip hop music and just get together after school and just dance and be silly. I think being silly together is really important. And so I think the schools where I'm seeing people be willing to be silly together, either before school or after school, there's a lot of great in that. There are other schools where they're intentionally, whether it's the notes that I talked about giving to students, they're giving those to each other. Just being intentional about, hey, I saw you do that last week. You teacher, I saw you step in there. Or, everybody's lost things. Like I've lost 11 friends. Even as you know of somebody's parent or their loved one being sick, just sending a little note and some flowers so just sewing into each other as you're seeing each other struggle with things. Those are the things I'm seeing all over. But really that doing something physical together has been really powerful. I'm seeing other schools. I was just in a school last week where they are eating a meal together every other week. So they're doing a potluck every other week just as a way to be face to face with one another, sharing a meal. So I think any opportunities to be together in ways, and the beautiful thing about this building I was in last week where they ate together is, like, I suck at cooking. That is not one of my skill sets at all. And so what was really nice is those people that really love to cook brought food, and that was their gift. Like, they enjoyed doing it. People that didn't like to cook were told, don't bring anything then, just come and eat. So there wasn't pressure for everybody to bring something. They actually had a little pot of money that the principal had invested in going to buy food so that not everyone felt the pressure to cook an extra meal to bring to school. And I thought that was pretty cool. I'm seeing a lot of administrators invest some money in honoring several teachers a week. So teachers feel seen and heard too, much like students. So I'm seeing that from a number of superintendents and principals, like really investing in getting Starbucks cards for teachers that are going above and beyond and making sure they're seeing teachers too. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing as I travel the country. And I've gotten to talk to superintendents and principals, and the ones that are doing well are those that are really sewing into their people too. So you've got to lead from the top. Yeah. Are there thoughts or questions? Thoughts or questions? Administrators, anything from you?
Any other questions?
Be kind to yourself. I mean, it's really, I'll just own I'm a perfectionist, and so I hate when I'm not able to show up as my full self. I hate it. But one of the things that I've been telling young people, but I've been telling teachers too, if you're only at 80% today, show up 100% of that 80%. That makes sense? I think sometimes, like, I will just own for me, I would beat myself, like, I suck. This time last year, I was doing this, and now I'm not there. I'm like, you know what, Erin? This is not this time last year. This is a new year. And so it's so important that you show yourself grace. Like, give 100% of what you have, but if what you have is not your best right now, just give 100% of what you have. It's really important, because I know maybe you're not this, but I would beat myself up if this activity that I did every year, now this year is not going the same way, and students aren't responding it to, and I would beat myself up for it. Show up as 100% of what you have right now. And talk your students through that too. They need to hear that too, that, you know what, I'm doing the best I can right now. Give them permission to also show up as 100% of what they have, because they're also tired and stressed, right? So I think being transparent right now is really important. This may be the toughest season in education that we've seen in our country in my lifetime, just as I travel the country. And the other thing I'm going to add to you is be happy you're not in the South, because I have spent some time in the South, and it is so tough. Just the ways that teachers are being targeted, and I don't know if you've read any of the news about some of the places where your words can literally get you fired, and students are recording teachers, and then there are literally bounties out. So literally, it's called a bounty. If you hear a teacher talking about this, send their name to the state and you'll get a $500 bounty. That's happening in 2 of the states where I just was in the last 3 weeks. And so be happy that you are in Oregon because I just got to be in some spaces in the last couple of weeks where teachers are not only tired and not only stressed, but now have to think too about policing their own words and what can I talk about in my class, what can I not talk about. Just be the best you that you can be right now. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for sticking in it. This is a really hard season. And man, I so appreciate you. Your students appreciate you. Your families do, even if they don't tell you. High school families don't do a good job of telling you. So just know they appreciate you and value what you're doing. So even if you don't feel it and you don't hear it, know that they do appreciate you. So thank you so much.
Again, Erin, thank you for being here, and thanks for the reminders. Thanks for the reminders to our students. I can tell you this, you know, I tell the teachers and staff, find a way that we can get together, and we can actually get a chance to see each other in person. Because I think we want to do this with families, and then we kind of isolated and pandemic. For being here and sharing some of those strategies with us here today. So thank you, Erin.